Buonasera e benvenuti al webinar Prodotti della ricerca artistica, esperienze internazionali. Good evening, great West Professor Celletti, Jans, Schiller, and Parker.
Buonasera e
Welcome
benvenuti al webinar
to,
Prodotti della ricerca.
to webinar. E i prodotti della ricerca artistica, il mio è un breve saluto naturalmente, sarà un breve saluto istituzionale in qualità appunto di presidente dell'ANDA dell'Associazione Docenti AFAM e d'intesa con il coordinatore del gruppo di lavoro sulla ricerca dell'ANDA, il collega, il professore Giovanni Albini, abbiamo inteso dare atto a questo momento di riflessione soprattutto sui prodotti della ricerca. I prodotti della ricerca devono promuovere, devono favorire la conoscenza, l'innovazione, lo sviluppo, l'educazione, sicuramente la formazione. Ecco, la ricerca artistica è, noi sappiamo, è un momento, è cruciale per l'innovazione, per l'evoluzione soprattutto anche dell'arte. Deve consentire in qualche modo agli artisti di spingere i confini della loro pratica, di interrogarsi, di riflettere, di in qualche modo criticamente contribuire a un discorso culturale e sicuramente anche sociale. E per questo sono fondamentali proprio i prodotti, ecco, per valutare l'impatto della ricerca, per favorire la riflessione dunque e anche stimolare il dibattito scientifico-artistico. Abbiamo qui graditi ospiti questa sera. Saluto naturalmente tutti i colleghi, in particolare anche la professoressa Celletti che avremo modo di ascoltare tra qualche istante. E noi sappiamo quanto naturalmente è importante la VQR, la famosa valutazione della qualità della ricerca universitaria, ormai se non erro giunta alla quarta versione. E sappiamo anche che il nostro settore, il nostro comparto, l'alta formazione artistica musicale, in qualche modo oggi è investita pienamente nel mondo della ricerca. Di prossimi mesi naturalmente si avvieranno i dottorati di ricerca, un momento fondamentale naturalmente di sviluppo proprio di questo settore, l'avvio appunto del terzo ciclo e non di meno naturalmente siamo in attesa anche del decreto proprio sulla VQR per l'AFAM e in questo discorso, come è possibile ben immaginare, i prodotti della ricerca artistica naturalmente giocano un ruolo fondamentale. Da ormai da qualche tempo l'AFAM è entrata a pienamente e a diritto in questo mondo chiaramente della ricerca. Certo, non mancano le difficoltà, siamo soltanto all'inizio, chiaramente abbiamo un problema ancora di strutture, di infrastrutture, di uffici, come anche naturalmente bisognerà capire come sarà gestito tutto il discorso della remunerazione naturalmente di queste ore da dedicare chiaramente da parte dei docenti proprio alla ricerca, che finora noi sappiamo bene naturalmente è stata gestita in maniera, tra virgolette, clandestina, come dire, su base volontaria, ed è quello che in qualche modo noi svolgiamo oggigiorno. Io credo di concludere qui questo mio breve saluto istituzionale e cedo volentieri la parola al collega, all'amico, al professore Giovanni Albini, naturalmente, che condurrà questo momento di riflessione. Grazie.
Grazie Antonio, grazie Presidente per questa opportunità che ci è stata ancora data. Faccio un piccolo riassunto in inglese di ciò che hai detto e procediamo con i nostri ospiti. First of all, I would like to thank the four speakers who have made themselves available to bring their valuable knowledge and experience to this webinar. Within our association, there has been a strong demand for an event to discuss research outputs with a particular emphasis on the need to highlight international experiences. In fact, the introduction of the first doctoral cycle for conservatoires of music and Italian academies in the next academic year marks an historic step. And in this context, a current topic of discussion is the evaluation of research in art institutions and the identification of admissible research outputs. I would therefore like to start by giving the virtual floor to Professor Alessandra Celletti, member of the Governing Council and Vice President of ANVUR, the Italian National Agency for the Evaluation of Universities and Research Institutes, whom I thank again for accepting our invitation. Prego, professoressa, grazie ancora di essere con noi.
Sì, grazie a lei, professor Albini, grazie al professor Caroccia e saluto tutte le persone che sono adesso collegate in rete e gli ospiti. But I switch to English as agreed with the organizers. And I would like to show some slides. So let me share the screen first. Okay, so I prepared some slides which summarize the evaluation of the research assessment, which is known as the assessment of the quality of research, which is known with the acronym of VQR. VQR stands for Valutazione della Qualità della Ricerca. So this is an exercise which has been conducted by ANVUR, and we are, as it was mentioned already, at the 4th edition. The first 3 editions were running for the periods 2004, 2010, 2011, 2014. So from that point, every 5 years, 2015, 2019, and the last one is running 2020, 2024. I've been the coordinator of the third VQR, so 15-19, and then presently also the coordinator of 2020, 2024. Let me say that I show in this slide 4 main documents which are at the basis of the VQR4, that is the last VQR, with the one that it is running now. The first document is a critical analysis of the previous VQR, which is run by ANVUR. As I always say, there is no a good assessment without an assessment of the assessment itself. So we made a critical analysis of the VQR. We asked an international expert group of 7 people to also to assess our evaluation, the VQR3. And on that basis, we started the VQR4, which indeed started with the decree ministerial of 1st August 2023, and the called VQR, which was published by ANVUR at the end of October 2023. So the people that work in ANVUR on the VQR are shown here: the board of directors, the general director, the managers of the administrative area, the research area, Dr. Marco Malgarini, officers, and we also have a strong support, technical support by Cineca. What can we learn about the previous VQR, the one that finished in 2022? In that VQR, the institutions that were evaluated were state universities, special schools, non-state universities, private universities, public research bodies supervised by Moore, and voluntary institutions. The products that were evaluated were results of scientific research, that is, articles, monographs, and so on, and third mission activities. As you will see, the second part will change in the present VQR. And to give the idea of the complexity of the VQR, let me say that we had 134 institutions for an overall number of more than 65,000 researchers, which gave for the assessment of more than 182,000 products, and moreover, 676 case studies for third mission activities. And all these were evaluated by 18 groups of experts, which are called with the acronym of GEV, Gruppi di Esperti della Valutazione, 17 for the disciplinary areas and 1 for the third mission activities. In total, we had 668 people, and which were supported, moreover, by more than 11,000 external reviewers. So these were the numbers, and we expect similar numbers also in the present VQR. Which were the products which were given in the VQR3? magazine articles, monographs, contributions in volumes, in conference proceedings, and then critical editions, encyclopedia, entries, patents, and then compositions, drawings, architectural projects, artistic theater and musical performances, prototypes and related projects, databases and softwares. So this is given in the call of the VQR, and what the products that were given for the assessment are given in this slide. As you can see, most of the products were articles published in journals, more than about 160,000, followed by book chapters, books, conference proceedings, critical editions, and so on. Another important point is the language of this product. This is, as you can see, there are mostly in English, which are orange. And as you can see, it's almost 100%, 99.49 for the first area, which is mathematics, physics, chemistry, and so on. And then we have engineering, 8B and 9. And there is a mixture of Italian in blue and orange in English. For those for social sciences and humanities and architecture. Architecture is 8A, and then we have social sciences and humanities, which are the remaining areas. Then, permission activities. These were related to case studies which were carried out in one or more fields of action, which were stated in the call, refer to one or two departments of the whole institution, but with an impact which was within the period of evaluation, that is 2015-2019. And in fact, the fields of action are given here. They run from intellectual and industrial property valorization, academic entrepreneurship, public engagement, Agenda ONU 2030, up to open science, innovative tools to support open science. As you can see from these numbers, from this figure here, most of the institutions provided case studies in public engagement. And this led us to think about something different for the new VQR, as I will show in a moment. Indeed, let me start now to tell you what are the novelties for the new assessment that is the VQR4, which refers to the period 2020-2024, and it is running now. The institutions are still the same: state and private universities, special schools, public research bodies supervised by the Minister of University and Research, and voluntary institutions. But the products have been changed. So first of all, on the basis of our own self-assessment and also the critical report by external people, and also we had also an interchange of opinions with all universities and Italian institutions, which lasted several weeks. So we have the results of scientific research are now, again, article, monographs, and so on, but they can be provided by an increased number of doctoral people. The exploitation of knowledge replaces the third mission activities, and also we have introduced research projects and research infrastructures, which will be assessed in the current VQR. Besides, in the call, it is explicitly mentioned, the goals of the assessment are explicitly mentioned. This was one of the crucial points which was underlined which was stressed by the international experts. For example, promote and stimulate the quality of the research, encouraging the participation of the research, improving the quality of the recruitment and career progressions, increasing the international visibility, participating to competitive international funds, stimulate the improvement of spending capacity, encourage and improve the knowledge sharing and exploitation activities, and also technology transfer actions, research infrastructure, stimulate the improvement of the quality of doctoral training, increase opportunities of collaborations at 360 degrees, encouraging the accessibility of data and publications in open access mode. What are the research products? On the basis of what we learned from the self-assessment and also from the experts, and also on the basis of one of Quara's recommendations, which is to recognize the diversity of research contributions in agreement with the needs of the nature of research, we have made an effort in order to better recognize the diversity of contributions. And indeed, we included the other products, for example, databases, including open type data, geological, geographical, and thematic maps, scientific editing, translation in magazines, critical interpretative review, procedures, reports, scientific reports and technical notes, and patents granted by individual national or international patent offices. This is a list of products which has some intersection also with the AFAN world, that is compositions, drawings, architectural projects, design works or prototypes, performances with character of originality, exhibitions are prototypes and related projects, audiovisual and multimedia materials. Now, these products must be are different from those which are given for the exploitation of research, that is third mission activities. Third mission, what is exploitation of research? The ministerial decree stated as in the following words. It means that the process of creating economic and or social value from knowledge, linking different areas and sectors and transforming data, technical skills and research results into products, sustainable knowledge-based services, solutions and policies that benefit society. Now, what are in this case, in the current evaluation, the fields in which one can provide case studies? Where these are listed here. Now, in the current VQR, we provided 5 main themes, which are technology transfer, production management of public goods, public engagement, life science and health, and finally, environmental sustainability, inclusion, and combating inequalities with particular reference to the objectives of the 2030 United Nations Agenda. And each area is further developed into a description of 5 fields which are given here. I don't read them, but you can see that while we had before 10 fields of research for case studies, now we have 25, a description of 25 areas. What are the assessment criteria? Just to conclude, for research products, there are 3 criteria, which are originality, methodology, and impact. And for case studies, we have social, economic, and cultural dimension of the impact, the relevance to the reference context, added value for beneficiaries, and then the scientific, organizational, and management contribution of the proposing structure. On the basis of these criteria, each product, either research product or case study or infrastructure, is assigned to one of the following categories, which are defined in the code, that is exceptional, excellent, standard, sufficient relevance, low relevance, or non-acceptable, with weights which are given here. So this is the basics of the VQR, and I'm ready to take questions, if any. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Celletti. But so we see that the university scheme for the evaluation of research can already include, in a way, our research outputs. So what do you think is going to happen for us?
Yes, one of the main, I think that one of the main, thank you for the question. This is very important because one of the main, I think, issues that has to be solved, that must be solved, is to think about the products that the AFAN world can deliver for the assessment. And here is a small list, but I'm sure that there are many others. So you have to make an effort to provide us with a list of products that you can deliver. and which have a research component. So differentiating them from the Thermission activities, let's say. So this is extremely important. So, or you can either take research and Thermission, but the list you must provide us with a list like we did here. Here it is a partial list of the research components, and here is for the definitely for the AFAN world, but I'm sure that there will be many others.
Of course, of course, of course. So thank you so much for this. I'd say that we proceed with the other speakers, and at the end we try to discuss all together. Thank you again. Now I give the floor to Professor Peter De Jans, founding director of the Orpheus Institute, a center for advanced studies and research in music based in Ghent, Belgium. Thank you again, Peter, for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Carroccia and Professor Abili, for the invitation. I prepared my contribution in Italian, so I will continue in Italian, but we can speak and talk or discuss later in English. So l'obiettivo di questo webinar è quello di approfondire il modo in cui la questione dei risultati della ricerca artistica viene affrontata in altri paesi. Nel mio contributo spiegherò la posizione dell'Orpheus Institute. Inizio con un breve profilo del nostro programma di dottorato. Successivamente illustrerò brevemente il modo in cui l'Orpheus Institute considera il dottorato artistico, poiché ciò ha implicazioni dirette sull'output della ricerca. Infine descriverò le diverse forme di output che sono valide da noi. Allora, prima il contesto, il profilo. L'Istituto Orpheus a Ghent, Belgio, organizza corsi di dottorato per musicisti, allora esecutori e compositori. I nostri dottorandi sono quindi prima di tutto musicisti, artisti eccellenti, ciascuno con una pratica artistica altamente sviluppata. La nostra formazione dottorale ha un carattere speciale, è interuniversitario e internazionale. Il nostro programma è una collaborazione tra diversi conservatori e università delle Fiandre, in Belgio, e dei Paesi Bassi. Il programma prende il nome di DocArtes. DocArtes è organizzato dall'Istituto Orpheus, che funge da punto di contatto tra tutti i partner di DocArtes. L'Istituto Orpheus ha avviato il programma di dottorato nel 2004, cioè 20 anni fa. Da allora sono stati rilasciati più di 50 diplomi di dottorato. Attualmente il nostro programma conta 57 dottorandi. Ogni anno arrivano circa 60-80 domande da tutto il mondo per il nostro programma e dopo la selezione di solito ne teniamo da 5 a 10. L'Orpheus Institute non rilascia un titolo di dottorato. Nel nostro paese, in Belgio, questa è una prerogativa delle università. Ma questo non impedisce al nostro istituto di organizzare il lavoro di ricerca vero e proprio. Lavoriamo a stretto contatto con le università, ma il centro di competenza è l'Istituto Orpheus. In secondo luogo, qualche parola su come Orpheus guarda alla ricerca artistica e al dottorato artistico. Permettetemi di iniziare con una considerazione importante. Per noi il dottorato artistico non è sostanzialmente diverso da qualsiasi altro dottorato. Per noi, infatti, il lavoro di dottorato artistico dovrebbe avere una chiara struttura generale, a partire da una solida domanda o problema o ipotesi, un metodo o metodi coerenti, un modo coerente di affrontare la domanda o il problema, se volete. Una solida argomentazione e una sorta di conclusione pertinente. Infine, Il lavoro dovrebbe essere aperto alle argomentazioni dei colleghi e dovrebbe essere contestabile e discutibile. Quindi, come vedete, non è affatto diverso da quello che viene richiesto in altre discipline. Socrates cerca artisti il cui lavoro pone domande o problemi che possono essere ulteriormente articolati e analizzati attraverso la ricerca. Ponendo e risolvendo tale questioni, questi giovani artisti e ricercatori possono cambiare la propria pratica e aprire nuove strade da esplorare per altri. La loro ricerca può persino aiutare a trovare un nuovo terreno comune tra artisti, studiosi, scienziati. In ogni caso è indispensabile che la ricerca trascenda gli obiettivi e gli interessi individuali. La ricerca artistica deve contribuire alla conoscenza e alla comprensione delle opere d'arte e dei processi creativi. Dovrebbe rendere disponibili intuizioni, competenze e materiali per usi e studi futuri, migliorando così lo sviluppo delle arti e la loro interazione con altre discipline. Per questo motivo, i progetti di ricerca artistica hanno sempre una duplice natura, comprendono teoria e pratica, comportano necessariamente una riflessione verbale in riferimento all'argomento di indagine, ma il loro potenziale artistico può essere osservato solo da prodotti concreti, siano esse opere, performance o eventi. Socrates lascia ai candidati una flessibilità per quanto riguarda il peso relativo delle componenti teoriche e pratiche e il grado della loro integrazione, ma la prospettiva dell'artista è al centro di ogni progetto. All'Istituto Orpheus la ricerca artistica vera e propria è legata alla produzione artistica. La rilevanza della ricerca concreta per la pratica artistica rimane una conditio sine qua non e deve essere dimostrata in modo convincente. Veniamo allora alla domanda su quale sia la produzione richiesta in un dottorato in discipline artistiche o più specificamente per noi un dottorato in discipline musicali. La versione breve è la seguente. Quando si difende un lavoro di dottorato nel contesto del nostro istituto, c'è una parte artistica e una discorsiva. Cominciamo con la parte artistica. La ricerca artistica è indissolubilmente legata al lavoro con il materiale artistico. Sperimentare con il materiale artistico è assolutamente una parte essenziale della ricerca artistica. È proprio qui che si distingue anche dalle discipline più tradizionali che ricercano la musica. Posso rendere questo aspetto molto concreto. La domanda ricorrente a un candidato al nostro programma di dottorato è la seguente. Puoi spiegarci perché devi essere un artista per fare quello che vuoi fare? In altre parole, dovrai spiegare che ruolo ha il materiale artistico nel tuo lavoro di ricerca. Materiale artistico in senso lato, uno strumento, una partitura, un'interpretazione, una pratica esecutiva, eccetera. Poi c'è la parte discorsiva. Si parla di tesi, o a volte chiamata dissertazione. In effetti, svolgere un dottorato di ricerca artistica richiede, oltre allo sviluppo del lavoro artistico, competenze come scrivere, riflettere, analizzare, argomentare, riassumere, eccetera. Quindi l'output di Socrates consiste in una parte scritta accanto a quella artistica. Se è vero che la musica può comunicare un'intuizione e un'esperienza che le parole non possono esprimere. È vero anche il contrario, soprattutto nel contesto della ricerca. La parola può infatti comunicare una conoscenza e un'informazione che non possono essere trasmesse dalla musica. Si tratta quindi di una combinazione di entrambi gli elementi. E nella combinazione della componente artistica e di quella discorsiva che la ricerca artistica si distingue essenzialmente dai progetti puramente artistici. La parte scritta può assumere diverse forme. La scrittura creativa non è vietata. Siamo naturalmente aperti, ad esempio, agli ipertesti o a forme di scrittura più sperimentali. Tuttavia, la dissertazione deve sempre dimostrare di essere accademica, scientifica o teoretica teorica. Per aiutare i dottorandi in questo processo, Socrates ha sviluppato alcuni moduli di scrittura, un progetto di scrittura individuale per consentire agli studenti di sperimentare la scrittura di testi degni di un dottorato in combinazione con un lavoro artistico di alto livello. Anche se è certamente possibile produrre una tesi scritta che sia fisicamente separata dalla parte artistica, noi favoriamo una più stretta integrazione tra queste due. Per presentare testo, audio e immagini in un'unica formata, gli studenti lavorano spesso con il catalogo della ricerca, una piattaforma che permette di presentare il proprio lavoro in modo multimediale. Ci rendiamo conto che un regolamento di dottorato non può regolare tutto nei minimi dettagli. Nel quadro più ampio che ho appena indicato, rimane importante mantenere una certa flessibilità, in modo che il dottorando, insieme al supervisore, possa presentare alla commissione di dottorato la forma di output più appropriata per il progetto di ricerca individuale. Sono lontani i tempi della tesi di laurea strutturata in modo lineare, datelo scritta su carta e trasformati in un libro stampato da diffondere attraverso i canali professionali delle biblioteche universitarie a beneficio dei colleghi accademici. Al di là della rivoluzione digitale in corso, c'è spazio per questioni fondamentali che riguardano l'identità specificamente creativa della ricerca artistica, per cui se e quanto possiamo sperimentare con il formato di output del comportamento riflessivo, l'efficienza della comunicazione, la forma che equivale al contenuto, il pubblico di destinazione, eccetera. Questa è una responsabilità che riguarda noi, istituzioni presenti, e che dovremo continuare ad assumerci in futuro. Vi ringrazio per la vostra attenzione.
Thank you so much, Professor Dayens. You've been philosophically crystal clear, I must say. And thank you also for putting on the table the theme of flexibility. That is something so important when dealing with such themes. I must add that an issue that we have in Italy is numbers, if compared to other countries, even in Europe, that we have to deal with a regulation. And imagine that we have almost 80 institutions here that want to have a doctoral accreditation. So the problem of flexibility is really a problem here. Perhaps, Professor Caroccia, Antonio, you would like to add something.
Sì, una piccola battuta. Grazie davvero al professor Dacian, il direttore dell'Orpheus. Ho apprezzato moltissimo naturalmente quel passaggio legato alla produzione. La ricerca artistica è correlata alla produzione. Questo lo dico anche a beneficio appunto degli ascoltatori, e in modo particolare abbiamo qui con noi il piacere di avere la professoressa Celletti, che è vicepresidente dell'ANVUR. Ora, noi tutti abbiamo letto in bozza le linee guida, naturalmente, ANVUR per i dottorati di ricerca, e sono state pienamente applicate, come dire, le coordinate universitarie. Dico questo e mi dispiace, e spero che la professoressa Celletti possa farsi portavoce anche di questo discorso, perché la ricerca artistica non può fare a meno della produzione, cioè deve essere valutata la produzione anche nazionale e internazionale per i collegi dottorali. Questo penso che sia fondamentale davvero nell'ambito artistico e dell'AFAM. Quindi grazie veramente anche al professor Dejean, che mi ha dato la possibilità appunto di quel passaggio, perché ritengo che sia fondamentale. Cioè, noi siamo qui stasera proprio per ragionare su modelli e confrontarci naturalmente anche con i colleghi di altre istituzioni, proprio perché bisogna naturalmente ancora aprirsi, definire. Noi non abbiamo una definizione, la professoressa Celletti lo sa perfettamente, non esiste una definizione di ricerca artistica, voglio dire, è un mondo che stiamo costruendo nel nostro paese, ma questo mondo non può fare a meno, chiaramente, di guardare già a dei modelli strutturali. Chiedo scusa per questa, come dire, parentesi.
Grazie, thank you so much. Perhaps Professor Celletti, you would like, since you have been addressed about this theme, if you want to add something.
No, maybe we give the floor to the other guests, and then we will make a discussion later.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanking her for accepting our invitation, I now give the floor to Professor Gretchen Schiller, Principal Researcher at the Performance Laboratory, Choreography Researcher and Professor at the University of Grenoble-Alpes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for listening to a little bit of how we're doing things right now in France. I'm Canadian. I'm a dancer, choreographer. So I started in Canada, and then at UCLA, and then in Plymouth in the UK, and then in Grenoble. But throughout my career, the body has been the way that I understood the world that I'm working with, so that it is very important in practice-led research with dance to be able to access certain types of experience and value them as knowledge sources, savoir-faire, as we say in French, or know-how. And so I just thought I would say that, because that guides a lot of what I say, which guides the way we build institutions. It comes from an embodied place of working. In France, I direct a national network that is called RESCAM. I sent you the link to it. Today, we are 21 institutions, 21 universities that are part of this network. And it was created to put together best practices in France. France is not a place that in the past has supported at the university research creation works as Canada has or the Commonwealth countries have. For instance, in dance, the first PhD was in the 90s by Carol Brown, who's now a professor in Australia, who did a dance choreography piece. And so there's a history of dance work that is becoming more popular, I would say, now in France. But for RESCAM, what was interesting for us is to look at common practices, and we put together a vademecum that is on our website that allows you to sort of set the common guidelines for what could be expected for a research creation, which is the term that they use in France, which I find problematic, and I'll say perhaps why, is because within artistic research, there are different relationships that you can have. You can have what we use in Canada, the definition, which is product that is created. So on the national website, which talks about humanities research creation is defined by an approach to research that combines creative and academic research practices and supports the development of knowledge and innovation through artistic expression, scholarly investigation, and experimentation. The creative practice is situated within a research activity and produces critical informed work in a variety of media art forms. So these include, like the list of our colleague that just spoke and said there's more. I think the one that was missing from that perhaps is creative writing, which we see a lot of in the field. And each of these different types of artworks demand, as our colleague just said, a different type of flexibility, which would be negotiated with the doctorate student when they're working. That is crucial because they each involve very different temporalities of production. The way someone works in film is not the way someone works in music composition, is not the way someone works in the dance studio, is not the way someone works in writing, creative writing. So these are things that are really important to look at. And the other point that I thought was just important to look at with research creation is within that, something which comes from the Commonwealth practices is practice-led and practice-based, meaning that you can use creative research, like use practice in your research, which we do a lot in dance, but not necessarily produce an artifact. You need to use the studio work to be able to obtain certain knowledges, but you won't necessarily make an artwork, or you may make an artwork. There's flexibility in those two types of outputs that we were talking about. So the two other points I would like to make about ResCom are that we have made a cartography of the universities that are putting together the labels, the labels for PhDs that have research creation, because it allows it to have a certain visibility. It allows it to have, because in France, they have to be then recognized from the CNU, the Central National Network for a PhD. They just can't get a job after they've applied for a job. It's another sort of hoop to go through, if you will. And so we felt it was really important to have a common language still with flexibility, but with the people that are adjudicating these works. And another point that we found was really important with the type of works that the students are making, whether I'm in performance, so I'm more in dance performance works or choreography or installation works, but we look at a vast spectrum of the artworks within the network, is that the students' works are not actually being seen. When the doctorate is finished, what remains is the book. And where is the work? You know, there is the research catalog. There are different tools on the internet that are be able to give traces of the work. But what we found is that we wanted to support doctorate students as they're making in their third or fourth year of PhD the work, and that they can share it within the community so that they're getting critical and artistic feedback as they're working, just as if you were going to give a conference paper somewhere. And so that they have these lab experimental times. We've just put into place something called the Aide à Mobilité, and the students are coming to different universities within France and being given money to be able to share their work and articulate how it is that they're investigating how through their practice they think their practice. What is shifting through the way that they make the work, whether it's the family of artists that they work with, what is shifting? What's that cutting edge shift to work? And so I just thought it was really important to say that we at one point gave a prize to a PhD publication. We thought that, why are we doing that? We really need to bring this art to be felt and the research to be felt in the community. So that was something that was really important. And we're seeing a diverse type of products that are being made. And another element that is our next conference area is the type of book and how the book, when we write, is being produced. Different types of writing, different narrative forms that includes processional, but that can then also be understood by other readers, because one cannot have such an idiosyncratic language that cannot be critically understood and discussed and debated, which I think my colleague was talking about. The two other things that I want to bring up is that you asked about the pitfalls. What are the problems that we're finding in PhD direction? And one is in France, there is not enough professors that are trained in this area. And so they're theoreticians, and they'll say, well, I do not know how to supervise someone in the arts. And so then they find someone that is the artist, and they said, well, you do the art part and I'll do the theory part, which is highly problematic in my eyes if there's not a real discourse that happens in exchanging between how the thinking and the practice are working together. And so that's something I think that really has to be worked, is how in our training of professors we're addressing this, and how are we not waiting till the PhD at the French universities to address research creation. So we've started doing that at the master's level. That's why I asked you earlier if you're talking just about doctorates, but we can't just wait for the PhD level to do this sorts of work. And so we've been working with different forms of bringing interdisciplinary programs at university that we've just gotten 10-year funding for, that allows the students to begin playing more, workshopping more. Like a physicist goes into a laboratory, having a more laboratory experience. And for that, we needed spaces, because it's fine to talk about making artistic research, but if you don't have the resources, then how are you really doing it? So that was a big push that we did with the performance lab that you're talking about. We have a building that we've built that's called la Maison de la Création et Innovation, with dedicated spaces to be able to make and research. So there's a real dynamic that we're trying to say, not there's the researchers on one side and there's the thinkers and others, but how we can have new conversations together about what we're working on. I think there's a shift happening in France, because we're having colleagues who were traditional theoretical professors in humanities wanting to contribute and experiment with new forms. And that's what gets me excited, is not saying how are we only going to support artistic research, but how at the university level these artistic processes start to bleed into the theoretical approaches. So there is a paradigm shift happening, which is experiential research, which allows you to problem solve through the making. So I think it's that shift. I think that's what I would say is happening with us right now. And it's very different in the countries where I'm Canadian. So what I see happening in Canada is very different than what I see in France. And what we're trying to say is perhaps these types of conversations are important, because we have to stop, I think, geographically mapping this area and sort of say, how can we have conversations? So just like a physicist whose work can be understood in another country, in another language, so should our artwork that is being made with PhD resources. I think that's all I wanted to say right now. But we also just, with the performance lab, developed, should perhaps just add, a lexicon with different colleagues working in the area to be able to share language, because I think that's what I find a lot of students are looking for, is the appropriate language to describe the work that is sometimes innovative. Where do they borrow from other disciplines? Where do they start to look for new forms of words that they need to create for especially inter-artistic work? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you also for addressing the issue of diversity. That's very, very important. Many topics we have been talking about, but this of diversity is in my head. So, finally, I give the floor to Professor Theodore Parker, Professor of Contemporary Improvisation and Artistic Research at the Estonian Academy of Music and Theatre in Tallinn. Thank you again, Theodore, for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the other speakers. It was interesting to listen. Just a brief overview of our academy. We founded a doctoral program in 1996, but acquired artistic research already in the year 2000. So quite ahead of many other universities in Europe. And this was originally one that was in music, but we added in 2006 a doctoral program in theater. So currently we have both doctorates in music and in theater. Listening to the conversation, maybe I think it's good to have an idea about what is the overview of what we're thinking of artistic research as being, because what I have noticed is there is at least some discrepancies between countries and schools, what exactly it is that we're talking about. So the way we see it initially starts with just thinking of what are the types of outputs that we are expecting inside of artistic research program. So we're interested in research which one addresses practice, as was previously mentioned, research which is enhancing practice, which doesn't necessarily have to tie to a product or a piece of artwork. We're also interested in research which is interested in producing new types of artworks, both for the stage and for both in theater and in music. We also integrate the idea of thinking about artistic research as having the possibility of development of new technologies, new materials, new models, and new prototypes, which have an impact on the arts. We also integrate the idea of thinking about artistic research, which could, in a way, influence the concept of service as we think about it in terms of, let's say, theater, where maybe this is a service might be a little bit more of a term we could relate to. So this is kind of thinking about this as the kind of types of outputs that we're expecting to see. Now, in our university, we don't just think that the creative side is only necessary. In a practical sense, we are also requiring that every student produces 4 creative projects, even in the case where the research might be oriented only directly towards practice. They're still responsible for producing creative products as well as a written text. And the idea being that the text and the creative projects must be in sync with each other. Which is something which, speaking about common problems, that's something in the last 10 years we've very much succeeded at that, but it was a problem 15 years ago. Getting doctoral students who were able to both produce creative works and text and to make sure that they were interrelated. This was one problem that thankfully we've solved by now. We also have recently been involved in very much the discussion about what is the kind of knowledge form that we're expecting to be generated by artistic research. And I would say the current position is one leaning towards transparency, which is necessary, I think, at the moment, because we're still having this conversation about what is artistic knowledge, what does knowledge mean in this field of artistic research, and in an effort to follow the flow of what's been going on, how this has been changing recently. Transparency has been kind of the biggest issue that we think is a way to keep an open mind about where artistic research is going, but also making sure that that we are articulating ourselves clearly. This is how I teach my students. It's not that you are wrong or right, it's that are you clear about what you are saying. So transparency is a very big issue for us in relationship to thinking about knowledge. In terms of thinking about the evaluation aspect of research, which was how I understood the purpose of the intention of this event to be. We've recently established quite clear criteria. Just last year, we drafted between a number of the other partner institutions we have in Estonia who also have artistic research. What are the kind of criteria by which we're demanding evaluation? The first is a very clear connection that is being drawn between the creative practice of the individual and the research outputs, that the research being conducted clearly articulates how the creative practice and the research are connected. So connecting theory to practice is clearly articulated in every research that we're producing. originality is one that we really are trying to push forward here. And I think that this is again, thinking about common problems, I think this is one that we really do need to focus on, because though artistic research is not necessarily new, at the same time, we find that there's lots of things that have already kind of been done in many fields. They just were never artistic research, but they're done. It's knowledge that exists in those fields. Many people know about them. So there's a kind of danger here about being able to produce originality that is actually original, that is actually really genuinely contributing to the field that it's proposing to. We also are attempting, this is probably also becoming more difficult, to make sure that we're addressing research projects which are socially engaged, that we are not only developing research projects which will just remain inside of academic circumstances, remain inside of the concert hall, but actually have the potential for reaching out beyond the academic building. I think this is something, the idea of visibility comes up in my mind, about something that we need to work on, as well as continue to address, that there is a need to make sure that what we are doing inside of our academies, people actually know. Especially, I think, especially in the case of the arts, where we all are probably well experienced in the depletion of arts funding across the board, so that artistic research can actually take a role, a leadership role, in trying to establish the importance of arts inside of the communities. So visibility, social engagement of the research process. And also a theme for evaluation is how well does a particular research address these issues of new knowledge in the artistic field, not necessarily defining them, but contributes to new ways of looking at how knowledge operates in a particular field. For example, previous colleague mentioned working with the body. I think that's an excellent example of where artistic research opens up perhaps a way to finally kind of start talking about the body, which was not relevant before. So this is part of the evaluation process as well, is to look at how each individual research project addresses the idea of how knowledge is generated inside of its own field. What does this mean practically? Maybe it's worth sharing how we practically deal with these issues inside of our academy. All of our doctoral students, as I previously mentioned, have to produce 4 creative projects. These are evaluated separately from the text which they are responsible for at the end, but as I said, they must be integrated. Everything, both the projects and the text, go under a kind of peer review form, so that everything is kind of overwatched by both outside peer reviewers and those working inside of the academy. Yeah, the last thing, common problems. Even though I've mentioned a few, there are still some that I think I've left out. One is especially when dealing with the first year and second year students, getting the understanding of how to connect creativity with theory, how to connect practice with theory. As mentioned previously, we have also started to address this in our master's program as well, by developing a number of courses for artistic research just for master's students, so that by the time they're getting to the doctoral level, they already have some awareness of what the field is, what it is about, what are we really doing. A second common problem I have noticed is definitely definitions. The word lexicon was mentioned earlier. In fact, I was just having a discussion with a colleague just a few hours ago about what does it mean? What does reflection mean? The idea of reflection as a method. What does it mean in Portugal? And what does it mean in Estonia? How are we using the term? Do we actually mean the same thing? So definitions about things, we often think we're talking to each other and that we understand each other, but the more I speak with colleagues, the more I understand that it's not quite as stable as we think. So this does create some problems, both internationally, but also internally, I would say. So yeah, that would be, I think, my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Theodore. And thank you because you made me think about that this is an opportunity for us to rethink general and foundational research elements and concepts, as well as the ones of art. So this is real opportunity, the one that we are in now. And I'm sure that even the traditional research forms and methodologies will get some beneficial opportunity from this. So perhaps some last comments after all this presentation. I'd say, if you agree, that we can go in the same order of the presentation for a last brief comment. So I'd start with Professor Celletti.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm new in this field, so I want to say it because I am not the person of the governing board who is following the AFAM board and the PhD programs and so on. Nevertheless, I have an interest. I am a mathematician, so in some sense, I'm very close to artistic production, especially when you think about my former the former scientists like well, also Newton, Kepler, and all these giants of science were very close. There was no distinction at a certain point between science and art and music. So the melody, there was I just wrote a few weeks ago a paper on the two concepts of melody in art and science, and there is a deep connection between the two. Okay, having said that, you want me to be concrete and to be the humble person, not the scientist and artist. So let me come to the point. I think that the effort that has been done in the last months or years has been very productive, especially listening to what our foreign colleagues were saying. In my opinion, the ministerial decree 470 of in February 2024 is an important step because it recognizes the PhD programs also in the AFAM sector. This is a crucial point and which have been worked also thanks to our colleague Marilena Magnaci, Marco Malgarini, and the other people from ANVUR. Now we come to the point of the VQR, the assessment. I've been very happy to listen what Theodore was saying. At a certain point, I was saying, well, but he's saying, in fact, what we are doing for the research products, because one of the crucial points is to establish some criteria. And he was mentioning originality, which is one of our criteria. He was mentioning the connection between theory and practice, the creative, how the link between creative practice and the research outputs. And this is, again, in some sense also related to the impact and the methodology. So the three research criteria which apply to standard research or science products apply also to AFAM products. In my opinion, so there is not much difference. And he was mentioning also another crucial point, which is that of social engagement, the visibility. And this connects also to the second part that is also assessed in the VQR, which is that of case studies or valorizzazione delle conoscenze, as it is called now. So this is the general framework. I think it could be explored in both in research outputs, in science, and in art. The main point is to define, in my opinion, the crucial point is to define which are the products. They cannot be the same, in my opinion. It cannot be a paper, a book, because you have something different. And it has been also, I was Googling, looking for sorry for your names, Peter, Gretchen, and Theodore, and I found a lot of material there, because you can find, well, one of the main points is the artistic performance, which is not a book, which is not a paper, but could, in order to be assessed, you have to tell us how they can be assessed, how can a peer review, let's say, can be implemented. Could be, I don't know, a video, a live performance. So this is, in my opinion, the crucial point. As I said before, I'm new in this field, but I hope I bring new ideas, and especially because I have fresh mind and I know what happens in the research field. So thanks a lot, and I stop here, otherwise it is too much time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I am a mathematician too, so I loved what you said. But in general, thank you for underlining the unifying value of knowledge. So that's the most important part. Thank you so much, and also for all the work that you and ANVUR in general is doing. So now it's Professor Deyans, please.
Thank you very much for all the contributions around the table. Really, really interesting insights. My final consideration, probably a short one, is if we combine the concepts of impact and assessment and relevance of artistic research, we could phrase actually the question, why are we doing this? Why is artistic research relevant? Why should it be relevant? Why are we doing this? And I see there a role that is different from the purely artistic role that artists have in society. So there is where we see artistic development happening. You not necessarily need artistic research to have this artistic development. That is exactly what we expect from great artists, to develop the art. But in artistic research, so to continue, this artistic development does not need research. But artistic research needs artistic development. Artistic research without artistic development is senseless. In a way, what artists, researching artists, should do, or what we expect from them, is pushing the borders of artistic production, of artistic knowledge. And I think that should also be one of the criteria or the assessment procedures, that we look to how is someone pushing the borders in that discipline. Apart from, indeed, for a doctoral research, you need originality and contribution to knowledge and so on. But is it really in the field of artistic practice that we push these borders? And I think that is a challenge. I must say, we have a lot of doctoral students, as I mentioned earlier. And in the beginning of our doctoral program, many years ago, we thought it is very difficult for artists to make them, to create texts, to think in a more, let's say, research way. But apparently, that is not the challenge. The challenge is really to give space to artistic material to make an argument. It is to work with artistic material in order to really push the borders of that material. And I think that is a huge, it's I think, underestimated, this challenge. And it should be one of the criteria to assess. That's my final contribution here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Deyans, and thank you because you underlined the key importance of art and artistic practice inside what we are doing. That's so important, not to misunderstood the real opportunity that is standing there. Great. So we will continue perhaps with Professor Schiller, please. It's the mic is off. I did the same. We cannot hear you.
Sorry about that. Thank you for everybody's contributions. And I was just thinking about the notion of failure and trial and error. And I think, there's no, just my husband's a physicist, and we often talk about, laboratory experiments that, a PhD can also be something that has failed, didn't work. It's an experiment. You write the paper and it didn't work. And I think the trial and error is so important that I try to bring into the work with the students here, because there's a notion in French of échec. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to fail. It's like seen as something bad, but my God, that's how you learn. That's how you start to decipher what that famous in dance, we say, what makes it work? Well, you only know if you have fallen to figure out how you have to get back up to do a certain movement. And so I think there's that messiness and sometimes that sweat and that part that you have to accept in doing research, which sometimes academia can be very clean and controlled. And so, and human beings are not that. We're vulnerable people. And I think that's what I love about practice-based research, is it allows us to bring our vulnerability back on the table, especially what's going on with the world today. And Theodore, I was just thinking about the question of social engagement, and I'm finding a lot of students right now are also addressing questions of art with activism. They're really trying to say, well, how I need to be able to work, not just to engage or have an impact on society, but how is that just actually, I'm starting to say in French, création. How is this shifting the way we think on something? So I guess that would be my final word, is just letting there be the messiness through the process that does not necessarily have to stay messy when you want to evaluate the students, but that lab experience in the process. So I think that's my final word.
Thank you so much. That's so important. I totally agree. Thank you so much. So perhaps for the last comment, statement, Professor Parker.
How intimidating to have to be the last. I have to think of something very nice to say, because you've all said something really nice.
You can fail.
Yes, well, we'll see. I think that the word that just popped up in my mind was this word, communication. It addresses, I think, all of what the three previous speakers just said, that I mean, artistic research can have many functions, but definitely one of them is pushing the borders, and it's definitely one of the most important ones. But I do think it's also, artistic research has a secondary benefit in that it provides artists with an ability to communicate, not just through the artwork, but actually to speak, to actually speak in a clear and concise way, to be able to present the work in not just text formats, but in verbal formats or in lecture formats, or to be able to actually talk. And this is something I see quite regularly. So yeah, this idea of communication in artistic research having a function and affording artists a deeper sense of communication beyond just the artwork itself. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You didn't fail. So thank you. As I could. Okay, so I thank you all for this. It has been a very interesting webinar for me. I have a lot of notes now to think about, and I do hope that we can do something similar very, very soon. So to discuss what has happened then, and to try, if we have failed, or to check what we have done, and to try to do something better if we can. So thank you everybody. Now I'll switch to Italian for the last. Quindi grazie ancora ai nostri ospiti, grazie a chi ci ha seguito e ci ha ascoltato, grazie al presidente professor Antonio Caroccia per aver ideato, consentito e per avermi aiutato in questa moderazione questa sera. E ci rivediamo per prossimi appuntamenti. Sì,
Webinar, ai prossimi nostri incontri, insomma, ecco, anche.
la scena italiana è molto calda in questo momento sui temi della ricerca.
Davvero sta vivendo un momento felice, ma naturalmente i provvedimenti che man mano arriveranno chiaramente la renderanno sempre più vicina al mondo universitario, quindi non possiamo che essere contenti di questo, ma bisogna naturalmente trovare la strada giusta, perché chiaramente l'AFAM è un mondo a sé, l'arte appunto lo richiede in tutto il suo bello, naturalmente, che lo contraddistingue. Grazie, grazie ancora a tutti. Thank you. Every day.
Grazie.